Hi, this is Shira Rubinoff. I'm here with Dwayne Alford, Vice President, Security Operations for Digital Hands. Dwayne, it's a pleasure to be with you here today.
I'm excited. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So, Dwayne, having the right effective security program in every organization is essential, as we all know. So, boiling it down, a security program is the entirety of an organization's security policies, procedures, tools, and controls. Basically, the organization's security program is the full security strategy and governance that protects the organization's sensitive data and capabilities. So, Dwayne, what is the number one challenge you see as an operator of an overall security program within organizations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The number one challenge, I actually think it's two parts to that number one challenge that have equal weighting, and that is not having a sound security strategy, right? Not knowing what you're doing from a security strategy and a direction, but also the ability to detect bad things, whether it's suspicious or malicious, is also a problem in most security programs.
Certainly. And do you have any helpful hints to organizations when they're looking at an overall security strategy? And obviously, we're going to dive deeper into it as we continue the interview, but just as an overall starting point for organizations.
Yeah, the overall starting point has got to be your users. You got to think about how your users are acting on your network and in your environment. Users are the biggest weak point and the hardest to detect problems for.
I love that you said that because organizations sometimes look at something out of the box and they need to understand that there's no one size fits all. Look at who your users are, look at how they interact, look at what they need, and really understand your whole ecosystem as a whole. So, we boil down to the Ciso also. What needs to happen when a Ciso buys a new product for the security program to help with detections? And that's a loaded question. I'm sure you have plenty of stories to share with us, and I'd love to hear your perspective, as well as any real life stories that our audience would love to hear.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to go about this one to kind of give you a background story. As an MSSP, we get the fun of being able to work with a lot of different security tools. And all of them promise some sort of silver bullet, some capability that they can detect things or do things just out of the box. Well, we had an experience with a few of these, but one in particular where the promise out of the box is we can detect everything. Our content is robust and it'll do all of these things to keep you secure or at least keep you informed on what's going on in your environment. And what we found out is it just isn't always true. In this particular instance, we had to work super close to their developers and engineers in order to make the platform actually perform at the level that their marketing or advertising claim to. We ultimately ended up rebuilding almost every detection using our own expertise and applying that to our customers' environments instead of using what was out of the box. So for a CISO, to turn that full circle to your question, a CISO, be suspicious, right? And if it says it works out of the box, make sure to test that to make sure it's working, right? Because the last thing you want to do is go to sleep at night thinking things are working when they may not be.
I love that you mentioned make sure to test it. You'd think that that was something everyone would say, of course, we're going to test it before we put it into production. But unfortunately, I'm sure from your expertise and your traction in the marketplace and seeing that that's really not the case. And that's something that they should not overlook. So is there anything a CISO can do to be sure their security program is working well besides testing out of the box? And I know there's so many different levels and areas they have to deal with. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. I call it the closed loop process, right? The first thing you got to do when you're going into a purchase or a contract for a new security control is define what the goals of that product's going to be or that service is going to be. Define those goals, then implement the product based on those goals, then test those goals, right? Test that it's actually doing the thing that it's doing, review those test results, and then go back to the goal setting, right? And say, did I accomplish all of this? Are there additional things we need to do? Are there things that we can't do now that we've done the testing? And just continue that continuous cycle of investigation across your environment and your security practice, and do it every time you do a step in the security program.
I think that's also another critical point you've mentioned. It's ever changing in our cybersecurity landscape, and the testing that needs to be continuous and ongoing and go back and retest is very critical for them. And obviously, you've been an operator for many years yourself. Can you give us maybe 3 to 5 specific actions that need to be taken as it relates to robust security strategy, including, some of the stuff we discussed as well?
Yes, for sure. I love this question because I get to have this conversation with CISOs all the time, right? And it's really 5 steps. The very first part of it is in your security strategy, security users, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call. Email, MFA, user awareness training, et cetera, right? Secure your users. Number 2 is get eyes on your environment, your perimeter, your endpoint, your logs. Number 3 is patching. Make sure your environment's patching. You have a very robust way of looking at what needs to be patches and what vulnerabilities you have. Number 4, and I think this is the part that ties it all together, is back all of those things up with policies and procedures. Then number 5, start testing that, right? Test all of that. Use simulation software. Make sure your security posture is holding up to what you expect. Pen test. Everything you can do to test your environment. But testing too early and simulating too early isn't going to do it, right? You've got to make sure you're doing it in order, right? Get your users secured, get your eyes on your environment, get your vulnerabilities and patching in place, policies and procedures, then test and simulate.
I think that list is super important, but even the fact that you mentioned that do it in the right order. And I think sometimes companies are so sitting in their own little silos and different groups, and they're just each operating as their own unit without corresponding or working together as a whole in order to create that flow that is very much needed. And I think, as you mentioned, doing it in order is very critical for your security posture. And I haven't yet heard somebody really say that in the way that you eloquently explain that. So thank you for that. And any final pointers you'd like to share with our audience? There might be any kind of cybersecurity helpful hints or business tips, or just something from your perspective that you found interesting in our ecosystem as of late.
Yeah, I think I would like to share that cybersecurity doesn't have to be complex, right? It can be simple, not easy, but it can be simple. It just takes a sound strategy to pull it off. So I've been doing this a long time and had the luxury of helping secure small businesses and very large enterprises, and almost all of them have the same requirements. So don't over complex it.
Dwayne, thank you very much for your interesting perspectives that you shared with our audience, and certainly a lot of helpful hints that I know our audience would definitely embrace and need to put into practice. So thank you so much for your time.
This was great. Thank you.
Thank you.